The 147th edition of the Wimbledon Tennis Championships are in full swing.
Quiet, please.
Held each summer at the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club in London, England, Wimbledon is one of my all-time favorite sporting events, and the business behind tennis's most famous tournament might be even more impressive than the play. That's because Wimbledon leaves no stone unturned. The grass courts are mowed, painted, and mopped every morning, leaving behind a pristine 100% perennial ryegrass mix cut to precisely 8 millimeters at all times. Every player wears white from head to toe, and security is so tight that Roger Federer was mistakenly denied entry in 2022. So today, we're going to examine everything, including the financials behind the sport's most iconic event, and why the hosting club leaves nearly $100 million annually on the table. Now, Wimbledon is so unique because, unlike most other major sporting events, which are shrewd in secrecy, the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club produces a 30-plus page annual report detailing all of the finances behind its 2-week-long marquee event. For example, the club reported that in 2022, Wimbledon tennis tournaments brought the club $440.5 million in revenue and a profit of $58.7 million, operating at a 13% profit margin. Now, the club doesn't break these numbers down much further than that, but based on previous reporting by Forbes, the individual categories probably look something like this. Wimbledon makes around 56% of its annual revenue from global broadcasting rights at $246 million. Then ticket sales and sponsorships each represent around 16% at $70 million. And last but not least is concessions and merchandise at 12% or $53 million. Now, if that sounds like a lot of money, it's because it is a lot of money, especially for a sport that is seeing a decline in youth participation. The more interesting part, though, is that Wimbledon is potentially leaving $100 million on the table by protecting the event's legacy, releasing cheap tickets, and handpicking only a few blue-chip sponsors. So let's go through the categories and start with global broadcasting rights. Like many other large-scale sporting events, Wimbledon makes most of its money selling global broadcasting rights. For example, an estimated $246 million of their $440 million in revenue currently comes from broadcasting agreements, both domestically in the United Kingdom and internationally in countries like the US. However, ESPN pays much more for the US Open at $75 million annually than Wimbledon at $42 million annually. Most of this discrepancy can be explained by the fact that the US Open is a domestic tournament for ESPN, whereas Wimbledon is an international tournament. But it's impressive that Wimbledon can command such a high number for its international rights alone, as its domestic TV deal with the BBC pays 2 to 3 times what ESPN is paying annually. And Wimbledon isn't the only one getting paid big bucks for TV appearances. In 2017, it was revealed that BBC paid John McEnroe between $210,000 and $281,000 for 30 TV appearances during the tournament. BBC drew a lot of criticism from this report because 1, BBC is a taxpayer-funded network, and 2, McEnroe's salary was 10 times more than what Martina Navratilova was getting paid by the same network. But not much has changed, and McEnroe has continued to work with BBC each year. That brings me to point number 2, ticket sales. Ticket sales are Wimbledon's second largest revenue driver. However, it's also one of the areas where they leave a ton of money on the table. For example, Wimbledon broke a record in 2022 when over 515,000 people attended the tournament over just 2 weeks. That resulted in roughly $70 million in revenue. But Wimbledon has refused to make its courts bigger over the years, and the tournament attracts 115 fewer fans than the 2023 French Open, 325,000 fewer fans than the 2023 Australian Open, and 373,000 fewer fans than the 2022 US Open. That's because Wimbledon's center court is significantly smaller than some other center courts, like Arthur Ashe Stadium at 23,000 spectators, compared to Wimbledon's at 15,000 spectators. Furthermore, Wimbledon's center court tickets rise in value as the tournament progresses, while grounds passes decline in price because there are fewer matches. If you look at the ticket prices for center court, you can see they're really not all that expensive. On days 1 and 2, you're going to pay around $100 on the primary market, and it goes all the way up to $324 on days 13 and 14 of the tournament. And grounds passes are an even better deal. On days 1 through 8, you're going to pay $35 on the primary market, and that declines all the way to $10 for grounds passes on the last day of the tournament. Another interesting nugget is that rather than increasing ticket prices each year, which many venues do by simply blaming inflation, Wimbledon sells 5-year debentures, providing fans with daily tickets to the tournament for 5 years at a stagnant price. So with primary market ticket prices ranging from $10 to $324, Wimbledon could raise prices and make tens of millions more in annual revenue. Instead, they take a similar approach to the Masters, intentionally keeping primary market ticket prices low. And that brings me to sponsorship prices, which is another area where they leave tens of millions of dollars annually on the table. After attending Wimbledon or watching it on TV, most people probably couldn't even name a single sponsor of the event. And that's exactly how Wimbledon likes it. Wimbledon only works with 10 to 15 sponsors annually. Brand logos on most courts are black, making them barely visible next to the lush green courts. And even though the logos on center court and court number 1 are white, they're so small that hardly anyone can see them outside of a few people in the first few rows. And if you don't believe me, just look at the difference between the Wimbledon courts and the courts at the US Open. One, you can barely see the sponsors, and the other one is covered in them. Still, brands like Rolex, Slazenger, IBM, Ralph Lauren, and Evian still pay 7 figures annually to be official partners at the Wimbledon Championships. The simplest way to explain this is that Wimbledon wants to be known for its clean green grass courts, so they intentionally limit the number of partners they work with and accept less money, enabling them to control the terms of the partnership and optimize for building long-term relationships rather than accepting short-term cash. The tournament's commercial and media director, Mick Desmond, previously told Forbes, quote, "Our clean court philosophy is at the heart of our brand." And that brings me to Wimbledon's famous concessions and merchandise. Concessions and merchandise may represent just 12% of Wimbledon's tournament revenue, but the category still brings in more than $50 million annually. The majority of this comes through merchandise. For example, the club sells its Wimbledon merchandise online, unlike the Masters, and it's not cheap. Shorts, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and jackets range in price from $50 to more than $250 per item. In total, Wimbledon will typically process about 155,000 merchandise transactions over just 2 weeks, with 450,000 products being sold. That's 58,000 baseball caps and Panama hats, 27,000 championship towels, 16,000 cross-racket logo t-shirts, 14,000 sweatbands, and 3,200 personalized baseball caps and championship towels, which equals 2.9 million individual stitches. Now, used Wimbledon balls are also sold daily, but all proceeds go to the Wimbledon Foundation. But don't forget about concessions. The All England Club reportedly sells around 190,000 servings of its famed strawberries and cream annually. And here's the best part. It will only cost you $3 per serving, despite the UK seeing record high inflation since COVID.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wimbledon. Please take your seats.
So ultimately, my point is simple. Similar to the Masters golf tournament, Wimbledon is willing to give up tens of millions of dollars in additional profit each year, and that's exactly why their tournament is so iconic. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. I make weekly videos breaking down the business and money behind sports.